And we are live here with Dr. Roger Yanka and myself, Kai Van Bodie. And we're going to be talking today about what is the true definition of medicine, or what are the multiple definitions of medicine, seeking to better understand that for ourselves and for our society at this time in history. And really going to be talking about a little bit about the role that our open-hearted, kind, loving, hands-on healers play. The massage therapists and the hands-on healers, the energy healers, what a role they actually can play in our culture, in our immunity, in our ability to thrive in times of uncertainty. So, how you
Thank
doing,
you,
Dr.
Kai.
J?
Looking forward to our time together. And let's don't forget those people who teach Tai Chi, Qigong, yoga, meditation, and then all those people out there who are just average folk, the accountants and the car salespeople and all those people who aspire to be a part of how the humans can actually make it through this.
Yeah. Yeah, I can remember a time when I was younger, and when I got into these kind of meditation and breathing, it was weird, and it was painful for me that my family wasn't interested. I was very clear there was no way you could ever make a living on it at that time. It was just a personal pursuit, and I feel like, and I'm gonna put this to you as a question: how do you want to talk a little bit about your role in the development of natural healing, and how has the public's perception of it changed from when you began back many decades ago to now?
Yeah, thank you. And I would love to hear the same from you, but sure, let me launch in here. Um, my dad died when I was a little kid. Before that, I wanted to be a baseball player. After that, I wanted to be a doctor. I went to pre-medical school. I sought a mentor in the realm of preventive medicine, and there was nobody there. And the people that I was talking to would say things like, well, no, we're doctors. We diagnose and treat diseases. If you want to learn how to take better care of yourself, you should go to a gym, or I don't know. And then they would kind of blow me off. And I found that really weird. I'll tell another little story. Years later, after I had studied Chinese medicine, because I found a refuge for my ideals being that there's a naturally occurring self-healing force that exists within a person, which I like to call the medicine within. And that's part of what we're going to try to define here today, is like, well, where's the medicine and what is the medicine? Now, I was in a place called Ohio, and I had an opportunity. I was working for a clinic, and the doctor there said to me, go down to the legislature and give testimony at this hearing that's happening. And basically the hearing was trying to decide whether to or not to define vitamins and minerals as drugs. And as I was in this line of people who were going to give testimony, the two people ahead of me was a kind of like a natural healing type person, maybe a chiropractor, maybe a massage therapist. And what that person was talking about was the natural processes within the human system that are encouraged in their function by having a balance of vitamins and minerals and so forth, and that those should not be regulated in any way. Those should be a part of how we nourish ourselves, and that they are nutrients. And the next person in line, the person before me, was a person who stepped up to the microphone and said, I am a proud, radical, right-wing at that time there was something called the John Birch Society, which was the absolute nth degree of the right wing. And that person said, I have a personal right to do what I want with my life. And one of the things that I have a right to do is access nutrition. Now, the point that I'm making here is that this was like a far lefty and a far righty, and they were both not in the middle. They weren't in the middle, but they were there in defense of the same ideal. And I thought that was amazing. And so the year would have been 1977. And at that time, I was working at an osteopathic clinic in Columbus, Ohio, and it was one of the first integrative medicine clinics in the United States after the dark time of things like naturopathy and chiropractic and osteopathic and homeopathic being depreciated through the evil empire of the pharmaceuticals and the surgicals and all that. And it was a fantastic experience because when I went there, that doctor said to me, we always wanted to have a department of Chinese medicine, and I'm making you the head, I'm making you the chief of Chinese medicine at this clinic. And I was just back from Hawaii, where I had studied Chinese medicine. So there was a constant flow of people through this clinic, and they came from all over the world to be with this doctor who was harboring these chiropractors and naturopaths and osteopaths who had basically lost their right to practice medicine. And I was studying massage. He said, if you get your massage license, because I couldn't get a license for Chinese medicine, he said, if you get your massage license, then you can do acupuncture here. So I went on down. I said, I'll sign up for this massage course. 2,000 hours. 2,000 hours. That same year, if I would have lived in California, I could get a massage license with 100 hours. Mm-hmm. So it was really like being an osteopath. They called it a medical massage license. And so I was always exposed to a community of people who were interested in these things. I was also very exposed to Native Americans, and they were all up into, herbs and rituals and so forth. So for me personally, the community has always been very vibrant and present. And my grandmother was an herbalist. And so I'm probably not the best person to ask about the change, but allow me to say one more thing about it, is that as rapidly as ideas like hacking the neurosystem, hacking the energy system, hacking physiology, and basically hacking meaning to find your way in to ways to be able to maximize function without having to pay up in an expensive and frankly inappropriate medical system. And so that whole language of a kind of a new era language of how to be able to be maximized and optimized that's new-ish. Old ideas, new community, new language, new shall we say new dynamic, new energetic, new enthusiasm. But honestly, in terms of the extent to which it's had an influence on the world, the way the world works, we do now have at the National Institutes of Health, we do have an office that's been open since the 1990s, called originally the Office of Alternative Medicine, then the National Center for Complementary and Integrative Medicine, now called the National Center for Complementary and Integrative Health. So There is some policy in place that wasn't there before. There's a bunch of younger people like Kai. Frankly, I don't even know how old you are, but the point is that you're like a generation behind me, or I'm a generation in front of you. And one of the coolest things about being into vitality maximization is that the older you are, the more of an expert you seem to be. So, like, I'm not some kind of Johnny come lately here. I've been doing this for a long time, and I prove, and I proved, by the way, I'll just mention it. I proved that I could survive the recent viral challenge in the world uh, using only my innate immune capacity. And so supposedly guys over 65 or 70 are supposed to be immunosenescent, which means that your immune system becomes senile and can't do what it's supposed to do. Well, mine must have been doing something, because I have natural immunity by getting the disorder and navigating well. So anyway, that's a lot of blathering. How about you, my friend?
Well, first of all, I just want to thank you. You know, one of my when I left, the East Coast of the United States, and I was, let's see, I was 25 years old. My parents and family thought I was crazy to go to China and live. And I just had a knowing, because I had had some things happen to me after college where a woman that I worked with and taught with got cancer. And I was already predisposed toward the idea that there were herbs, medicines, mushrooms that were profoundly impactful on the human body, on the immune system, etc. And so I got to walk with this woman through her process of doing Western medicine, chemotherapy, and I just saw where the ball was getting dropped. And I want to give an example of this because I think it's valuable. It was like there are these treatment centers in America where they use chemotherapy and radiation therapy for cancer. But however, they also monitor the vitality of the human body, the red blood cell count, the white blood cell count, the function of the liver. And when a patient is immunocompromised during the chemotherapy, they will stop the therapy, put them on vitamin IVs, have them do yoga and breathing and eat really nutritious foods until the body recovers its innate immunity, its ability to handle the challenge of the chemo and the radiation, and then they'll put them back onto their protocol. And at that time, I'm 47, so we're talking 20 some years ago, they were getting much better clinical outcomes than standard, chemotherapy clinics around the country. They were a private organization. So that's where I became very passionate to educate, to do something about that. And back then, I didn't know about you, Dr. J. You were around, but I didn't know. And it felt like an almost insurmountable task, even when I came back from 7 years in China, to get anyone important to listen to me, that, hey, there's a whole other possibility of what medicine can be that can work in collaboration with what we've got that will change lives, save lives, change quality of lives, change outcomes in our budget for medicine and the way we spend medicine. And, I want to just thank you sincerely for not just disappearing to a mountaintop cave, or to not just running your thriving little clinic wherever you were, eventually to Santa Barbara, but also for writing about it and going to the Mayo Clinic to speak about it, to do everything you've done for all of us to bring natural medicine into the light of science and thereby into policy making. So thank you for the work you've done on that. And we could spend a whole, because when I did get your book in my hand and read it, I said, wow, this is relevant beyond my personal journey to China and the things that happened to me where I saw the power of natural medicine. This is relevant to everyone. So I just, yeah. But the origin of the question.
You are welcome, my friend.
Thank you. Yeah. So Dr. Young has written a couple books. One is called The Healer Within. Another one is called The Healing Promise of Chi. Am I getting those right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So they're incredible books to read, both informative, based in science, give you a deep experience of the wisdom of these traditions, but also have practical exercises that you can implement right away from the books. But part of the reason for this conversation series that we're going to be doing here is that now more than ever, with the challenge to know what media to trust, the challenge to understand why you can get a vaccination and then still get sick, and the news that's coming out that this is just the beginning of pandemics. It's just the beginning of new viruses and bacteria that we are going to have as a species. We are going to have to find, each of us, our own path through the coming decades, as pollution rises, as complexity rises. And, part of what we want to achieve today is to really help all of us understand that it may just be that right now, at this time in history, receiving massage, meditating, optimizing your sleep, and really optimizing your immune system, it may no longer really be an option to put down at the bottom of the list, to put off till someday later. And so my experience has been many more mainstream people, including blue collar guys that swing a hammer or fix cars. They are becoming curious and interested in their health practices, so that they can be in leadership as fathers and as breadwinners, and they know that it's probably not safe to just rely on waiting till you're already sick and then doing whatever status that has. And so, eventually today we should, before we're done, we should get to some health vitalization practice that Dr. Yonka can lead us through. But let's just turn, Dr. J, how would you start in exploring the definition of medicine?
Yeah, well, I would start with language, and and not so much by going to the dictionary and figuring out what the original origin of the word is, but actually to go to how we translate from other languages what it is that people are doing in their lives or in their professions, but in ancient times. Let's talk about shamanic time. And shamanic, what I mean by the tribal times, the indigenous times, previous to what we would call cosmopolitan living, previous even to agriculture. And there's a whole, what would we call it? It's a whole trajectory of the definition of a healer that starts way back. And when we go way back, the words that we use in our own contemporary language to describe who these people are is that they are medicine men and medicine women. And so if we ask ourselves the question, what does that mean? And of course, obviously, it doesn't mean that they are pharmaceutical researchers. It doesn't mean that they are surgeons. It doesn't mean that they own a pharmaceutical plant. It doesn't mean that they work for a pharmaceutical company. What a medicine person is an individual who understands the nature of the world. And so one of the things that we can invite ourselves into, which I think is absolutely fantastic, it's one of the reasons why Kai and I know each other, is that if we accept the invitation to understand the nature of the world, the first thing that we're going to bump into is, well, why are all these things happening? And whatever they are. And so you can look at politics and say, well, why the hell is that happening? You can look at international trade and ask the question, why does it happen like that? You can ask the question, why can't I or can't I buy an electric car right now? And what happened to all the things that go into an electric car that make it impossible to build an electric car today because of, international this and international that. You can ask the question of where does my food come from and how nourishing is it? We're going to ask the question, if I buy something, who am I assisting? And do I really need that much convenience in my life? Can I survive and thrive with less convenience? I mean, just like every one of those questions. And what school should my children go to? Um, who's my doctor? Do I need a doctor? And if I need a doctor, what kind of a doctor do I need? And is there something that I can do in my life to not need a doctor? So maybe I have a doctor, but I actually don't need her or him because of how I'm living. Ask the question, can I grow vegetables? Ask the question, am I allowed to grow vegetables? The answer is yes. Well, then what can I do about that? And if the world is getting more complex, could I grow vegetables? And what happens to the waste that we produce in my kitchen? Do I just put it in the garbage, or do I have a compost pile? And how hard is it to to make a compost pile? So all of these questions that rise as we become interested in the possibility of being a more, I'm going to call it being more conservative. To be a person who conserves, I want to conserve my energy. I want to conserve my resources. I want to conserve the amount of water and electricity that I use because I want to be a part of conserving society. Does that sound like a conservative to you? No, that sounds like a person who's making good decisions. So now, is a person who makes good decisions a conservative? Well, we get to ask that question, and we get to pay attention to when people say, hey, there's a conservative and there's a progressive, to ask, well, what does that mean? And who are these people? And to what extent do they care about me? So I don't know if that has anything to do with defining. Yeah, well, so let's just go one more step. Ask the question, what medicine was I taking to stay well for as long as I was well? Some kind of a medicine is produced within our own bodies. We have neurotransmitters, we have mitochondria, we have uh, uh, cell replication, we have metabolism, we have the immune functionality. How did all of those things work as well as they worked until they stopped working? Or until I started wanting them to work better because I realized I'm getting older, I don't want to take drugs, I don't want to need surgery, so I'm going to do something. I'm going to hack in. I'm going to hack in and figure out how these things work and how much is it going to cost me? And can I do some of these things, for many of these things that turn the medicine on, the naturally occurring healing resources within our own being? Many of the things that we do to turn on the medicine within have no cost.
Right.
So now, Kai, riff on that. You tell me what you know about supporting people who aspire to be more vital and clear-minded, and what is it that you usually help them to figure out how to do? And besides the cost that they have to pay to have you as their coach, how much do they have to pay for the things that they would do to be able to take this medicine within us and turn that on?
Yeah. Well, I work with a 6-gate system, that I call the gates of power, which are equally represented in our wisdom traditions from the Eastern medicine and the yogic sciences. These, I particularly revere cultures and countries where traditional medicine has been practiced in an unbroken fashion for thousands of years, even until now, alongside Western medicine, where the need for that medicine didn't go away, it only increased, and where there's a cooperation like in India and China. But regardless, we are all doing things, as you alluded to, every day, from the way we eat, the way we breathe, the way we sleep, where we allow our attention to go, to the electromagnetics of the machines in our house. How often are we barefoot on the earth? And I would say that I work with people in every way that they're willing to make changes, and I try to find the simplest, most efficient, most impactful change and start there. So one of the things that I can do, and we should probably get into some breathing, is, and a lot of this was inspired by my encounter where your work came into my life, which was just taking a time in the morning and the midday and the evening. This is one of my protocols. And you do 5 minutes of breath work. You notice the changes in the body. And from that expanded state of consciousness where you're not in the brain stem in fight or flight, nor are you in the limbic brain where you can be hijacked by your lower level emotions. But no, this breathwork puts you squarely in the prefrontal cortex where you can be in the balcony position. You can be on the bridge of the spaceship of your life, like the Enterprise, and you can see, wow, I can see where I'm hurting myself. I can see where, and then from that place you have a choice. But you must remember to do the breath work, to get into that state, to then ask yourself, how did my morning go so far? And how can I course correct for the afternoon? So I work with breath. I work with supplementation. I work with sleep. I work with food, all the same kind of tools, because these are as you said, these are the medicines that when we're healthy, usually they've been taken care of. And when we're not healthy, there's usually been a stressor or an interruption in one or more of those things. So let's, Dr. J, let's do a little breath practice. But before we do that, and we're going to go deeper into this topic, by the way, everyone, in the coming weeks on Fridays. We're also going to, Dr. Janka and I believe, are going to be together in October. Is that accurate, Dr. J? Are we?
We're not to 100%, but we're definitely, in terms of intention, we're there.
We're there. So in October, just a little public service announcement here. In October in Olympia, Washington, I'm going to be emceeing a really powerful event called I Am Massage. And it could really also be called I Am Healthy, or I Am the Medicine Within, because we have an incredible track for practitioners, massage therapists who need those CEUs to learn with some of the best teachers in the industry, teachers that have been doing massage and teaching massage for 40 or 50 years to up-level your skills. But we're also going to have a health enthusiast track for people who just want to come to Olympia and learn how to maximize their health through breath work and stretching and breathing. And we have a whole curriculum set up for them. And the link has just been dropped on some of you are watching this on YouTube, some on Facebook, but the link is atamassages.com. We are really intending to bring the level of the healers, of the massage therapists, help them heal themselves and expand their skill sets, while also having a tribal experience where we can be together in community, can celebrate life, we can breathe, we can remember, as the world divides us into our tiny little pockets, and as the media divides us into our perspectives, we can remember what it feels like to come together, to breathe together. And there's an element of human connection that is a deep type of medicine, an oxytocin medicine, a feeling like you're not alone medicine. We know the baby in the crib, even given food and water, will not thrive without human touch. So as strong as we are and as mental as we've become, we need the heart open. We need community. So Dr. J, maybe if I can request and drive the boat here a little bit, could you tell us a little bit about the medicine made right here in the heart and lungs through the mechanism of the baro and stretch receptors and that cascade through the neurotransmitters. And then could you take us through a breathing practice that will allow us to turn on some of that acetylcholine-based medicine, or the choline-based neurotransmitter pathway? Could you educate
Sure.
us, and then could we have an experience?
Yeah, yeah. And
Okay.
and so how we'll do this, as I'm imagining our time together over the next couple of weeks, we will do more of these kinds of practices, sometimes more body focused, sometimes more mind attention focused, and sometimes more breath focused. In the Qigong tradition, there are what we call three treasures, and there are many definitions of three treasures. And one of those is the three treasures of body adjustment, breath adjustment, and mind adjustment, which is also heart mind adjustment, which means not just the thinker, but also the feeler of the heart. And so first, a little physiology lesson. This is for you. This is for those of you who think, well, I'm not going to do this unless you prove to me that this has some kind of relevance through science. And so here it comes. When you take a deep breath to your belly, and maybe in the first yoga class that you ever went to, the yoga teacher said, you're probably not breathing using your diaphragm. We call it a belly breath. There are many different kinds of other words or phrases that are used to describe this. But what it means is that when you take a breath, you're literally using the diaphragm. You're not using the intercostal muscles of the upper rib cage to take a little tiny breath, which will support you in surviving. But instead, you're taking a full breath by activating the diaphragm. The diaphragm presses down, compresses the organs below the diaphragm, which are the liver, the spleen, the pancreas, the stomach, portions of the large and small intestine. All of those organs are like sponges. The tissue of every organ anywhere is like a sponge. The sponge is made up of all these cells that are going together. And when the diaphragm drops down, and there's more to it, but let's keep it simple. When the diaphragm drops down, it compresses those organs. The sponges squeeze into the lymphatic system, and a fountain of lymph rises through the thoracic cage, the rib cage, and enters into the bloodstream. So the belly breath is associated with accelerating the elimination system and accelerating the immune system, because the immune cells travel in the lymph. So that's the belly portion of a deep breath. Now there's a chest portion, and the physiology of the chest portion is that there's two mechanisms that we're going to be describing here, oh so briefly. In the lung tissue itself, there's something called a stretch receptor. And to be able to get the stretch receptor to do what it does, you have to stretch it. So it's not enough to take a survival breath. We want to move up to a thrive breath. And isn't it an interesting survive and thrive rhyme? It's just a fun little coincidence, probably. Or maybe there's more to it than that. But when you stretch the stretch receptors, what happens, and you have to fill your lungs completely to build, cause the lungs tissue to stretch enough to trigger the mechanism that we're talking about here. And when you trigger that stretch receptor mechanism, it sends a signal into the spinal cord and the brain, which is a trigger for a parasympathetic release of choline-based neurotransmitters. And the key word there is acetylcholine, because acetylcholine is a big part of all the transmitters, the neurotransmitters that have to do with recovering, well-being, renewing, resting up, all of that. So it's the self-healing mechanism, basically. Now, there's another receptor, which is in the vascular system, which is around the heart. The vascular system is everything to do with how blood goes from the heart and returns to the heart. And there's a mechanism called a baroreceptor, baro like in barometer, which means activated by pressure. And so when you take a deep breath in the chest, it builds pressure in the thorax or in the thoracic cage or in the rib cage. And that then triggers the release of acetylcholine, which then becomes a part of these neurotransmitters like endorphin, which is pain relief, serotonin, which is rest, and oxytocin, which is the sense of security. So imagine taking a deep breath, belly and chest, gives you a rush of basically drugs that are produced within your own body. So let's do it now. And by the way, over time, what we're going to be doing probably is looking at all kinds of breath practices. But one of the things that I've done over the years is develop to distill the breath practices from India, China, and all the other indigenous cultures into 4 different breath patterns: a 2-part breath, a 3-part breath, a 4-part breath, and a 5-part breath. Right now, we're going to use the 3-part breath, which is basically first the belly, then the chest, and then exhaling very slowly. And one of the most important features of this is the slow exhalation. And what you'll find is that this is pretty easy to do, but you can't do it unless you decide to. So not only is this a physiological practice, but it's also a psychological practice, a mind practice, a consciousness practice, because you won't do it unless you decide to do it. So here we go. Belly breath means drop the diaphragm down, breathe in. Now expand your chest, breathe in part 2. Now exhale slowly. So I'm going to use my hands to reveal that when it's time to breathe in, belly breath, chest breath, exhale slowly. Now, if we do this 4 or 5 times, you will already, most of you, will already feel like, ooh, I think I'm getting a little buzz or I'm getting a little high. Why? Well, because you're transforming the internal environment completely from get her done mode, like listening to Kai and Dr. J, get her done mode, and you're shifting to rest and recover mode. So let's do it again. 2 breaths in. Belly breath, chest breath. Exhale very slowly. Two more times. Belly breath, chest breath. Exhale very slowly. Notice, turn your attention inward. Notice what you're feeling. Get present. One more. Belly breath, pumps the lymph. Chest breath, releases drugs. Internally manufactured, safe drugs. Exhale slowly. Place your hands in your lap. Hold your attention inward. Scan, scan, scan to the tips of your fingers, to the tips of your toes, to the top of your head, to the tips of your nose. Notice where your shoulders are. Maybe drop your shoulders just a little bit. Take one more, any kind of deep breath, your choice. Stay focused on what's happening now. Exhale slowly. And then just take one moment, and then we'll turn it back to Kai. Take one moment to ask yourself the question, how long did that take? What did I feel? How much did it cost me? How hard was that to do? And then reflect that back on the fact that the belly breath is accelerating the elimination system, which is discharging metabolites, that is the byproducts of metabolism and any other kind of pollution that's collected in the body. And the chest breath is discharging drugs, pharmaceuticals produced in your own body for no cost that have pain relief and rest and security or trust or a sense of the presence of some kind of ubiquitous, universal love feeling. I mean, people pay good money for drugs to make that stuff happen, but you have to keep paying. Here, we're making drugs that give the same, they're better because there's no side effects. They have no cost. Same effects. And how cool is that? How incredibly, amazingly, radically, disruptively cool is it that we make medicine just like that? Your thoughts, Kai?
I love it. I love it. I felt it. I felt the blood come to my face. And, I think one of the other things that you and I connect on is this tradition, the Taoist tradition, which has brought really Chinese. Without the Taoist tradition, there's no Chinese medicine. And more than it was a religion, it was a form of empiricism, of science, of observing how do we stay healthy, how do we clear our minds, how do we make love, how do we do art. They were looking at the universe outside and inside to figure that out for thousands of years, and I'm so indebted to them. But one of the things that they were conscious of, even 2,000-3,000 years ago, is that as society becomes more complex, we may fall into the trap of looking for complex solutions to complex problems, when in reality, a complex problem will always require a simple solution. That's in fact the antidote to the complexity, is the simplicity. And so we're leaving you here with the being touched, and our posture and our breath. These are the foundations of health, so that even if we need Western medicine and its complexity, we will respond better to it. We will take less time to recover. We will not have to be in the side effect portion of it for as long if we start. And it can start with a simple radical change like conscious breathing, like Dr. Yanka just showed us. And there's no faith required. We know what neurotransmitters, we know what's going on with the lymph. And when I like to talk about this, that when our rational mind, as Dr. J does such a good job of, is on board, and you completely understand why this is worth your time and what it does, then it requires less willpower often to take the action on the other side. So we're looking so forward to bringing you more of this in the weeks that come. The links have been put around to ATA massages.com. And I just want to answer a couple questions from the chat. Would that be okay, Dr. Yanka? We have about 7 minutes.
Yes.
Okay. So one of our YouTube people tuned in from YouTube asked the question, could you talk a little bit about Tui Na, however we want to pronounce it? And I'm happy to. I don't know if this gentleman wants my perspective, but I'm happy to chime in as well. So.
Yeah, so you go first and I'll come back.
Well, I mean, to make it really simple, let's just take what the Chinese words are. Tui is push, and na is to pull. So it's the Chinese form of physical therapy and medical massage that uses the meridians and the acupoints and the understanding of where the channels are and how the bones operate. And its basic premise is, if you've ever heard of metabolic whip, when you go from the sauna to the cold plunge, back to the sauna, back to the cold plunge, your blood in the cold goes deep into the middle of the body, into the tissues. And then when you go into the sauna, the blood comes out to the superficial tissues, and your blood is breathing through your body. So it's this profound healing impact on the circulatory system. And so, one of the ways that a Toi Na is unique is that you're pushing the tissue and pulling the tissue to move oxygenated blood into the places where it may not be getting, so that you can heal injury. You can bring that functional energy to a part of the body that maybe it's not getting it. So that's my opening, and then I'll pass it back to you, Dr. J.
Yeah, thank you. Great question. So in Chinese medicine, there are many, many features, but the primary features are acupuncture, which was not developed until 2,000, 3,000 years ago. So then you think channels or meridians and energy points, we call acupuncture points or energy centers. Now, how were those energy centers treated or activated before acupuncture? And the answer is Tui Na. There's another word for massage in the Chinese language called Anmo. And Kai, do you happen to know the definition of that? I mean, one of the things An is, I like to think of it as creating inner peace. Because
right, Chinese characters sound the same. An is to press, and mo is to rub.
Right. So
pressing and rubbing.
You still feel peaceful when it's done, so we can say that.
Yeah.
So the acupuncture, any kind of qi-oriented physical therapy, herbal medicine, and then the fourth one is usually qigong, or some kind of mind-body practice, including Tai Chi. And you could say that there's 5 parts to Chinese medicine and add nutrition. And you could say that there's 6 parts to Chinese medicine and add sit down, be quiet type massage, as opposed to qigong, which often has movements with it. So when we think of these Chinese physical therapies, Anmo is one of the ways to call it, and Tui Na is another way to name that. Remember that they are always in a relationship with, when we think of herbal medicine, don't think herbal medicine, think herbs. So what is one of the most important herbs that we could ever take? Broccoli. What's another incredibly important herb that we can take? Kale. What's another one? Chard. What's another one? Parsley. So those are all herbs. So then we get into this beautiful discussion, which maybe we'll have one day, which is what kinds of herbs cause internally shifted effects in physiology, which we would call those medicinal herbs, and then what kind of herbs are nourishment herbs, and then what kinds of herbs are adaptogenic, or what we would call longevity inducing herbs. So there's a whole thing that we can discuss about.
Let's do
about
that.
the herbs.
Let's do that. I think we're gonna get you guys that have been watching, and if you feel free to share this video around, ask for what you want, and we'll do our best to meander through different topics. We promise that each Each week we'll have something experiential that will shift your energy and turn on the medicine inside. I think talking about those herbs would be a lot of fun. I also selfishly want you to take us through your chi facelift massage, which is this. I always, in a lot of ways, in my early days learning the Chinese healing arts in China, I was very unimpressed or uninterested in the warm-ups, in the tapping, in the massaging. You know, it felt like something. I was in my 20s. You know, it was like I want to get into the punching and the more mystical states. But now, and it really through you, man, we do this in Dr. Yanka's qigong system that he's passed on to humanity and is on its way to helping and getting to where it needs to go. There is a chi facelift. And it's a self massage on the face, hitting the right acupoints, and the blood infusion that comes, and you could do that almost anywhere on the body. You know, we are equipped with these hands to massage ourselves. And speaking to the massage therapists out there at this symposium, we are really going to be challenging you and inviting you into higher levels of self-care, and remembering that you are your best advertisement. Your skin, your posture. So often our healers take on the energy of all the pain and suffering that they're working on those tables, and it ends up getting lodged in their bodies. And, you know, both Dr. Yanka and I are really passionate about giving you back to yourself, helping you find your way back so that you can keep having your impact on others. So, Dr. J, thank you so much. We are on next Friday, or is that the break? Are we straight through now?
We're on for a couple of Fridays. Yeah.
Okay. So, you know, through whatever way you can find us, drop those questions. Again, it's atamassages.com. And, you know, so great to hang out with you guys here. And some people are saying they're loving our dialogue. One gentleman who, if I were to try to pronounce his name, it would be a disservice to him. So I'm not even going to try to do it. I'm going to call him, you know, G. He's a Chinese medicine doctor. He said he's loving the dialogue. And Jessica said she'd love us to do the herbs. And yeah, lots of good feedback in the comments. So we'll make sure to go through and check it out. Dr. J, thank you for your time.
We got to do tea sometime.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, let's do tea. This probably won't be just 3 weeks. This might be a regular thing on, you know, 1 or 2 Fridays a month down the line. So I'd love that. I always get so much out of our conversations. So thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Yay. Thanks, Kai.
Got it.
Wish you well.
You too. Everyone listening, thank you so much.